down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Oh, goodness. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. So, I had a meeting with my partners here, my TGRN partner who, well, anyway, and so kind of threw me off a little bit. I meant to have the stream do what it's supposed to do, and without getting into a whole bunch of technical details, that's why I'm about a minute and a half late. Because I forgot to turn that one thing on that helps me to make sure that the stream is, relatively stable. And so, of course, everything went all wonky on me. And of course, it didn't even help that Mrs. Whiskey came walking in after just getting back from a long day of her work. And one of the first words that she gave me is, "I need a drink." So apparently everybody is having one of those days. just saying. And speaking of drinking, I've been chastised by B. Patrick over on Rumble for not drinking the proper stuff. So I'm hoping that this will fit her bill. I am finishing off my Four Roses bourbon tonight. As you can see, the bottle is empty. I don't even think, there might be a drop in there. I can just barely see. There might be a drop or two. I may have to make sure that was, trying to get, let me just make sure I get that all the way in there, because of course, got to make sure we drink all the liquor out of the bottle. Now we recycle around here. And what I really want is I really want to get a bottle or two down to Toddles bottles and get some lamps back. But anyway, so there we go. Here it is in the famous We the People American flag glass with its freedom seed, or otherwise known as a pew-pew bean, molded into the glass itself. And you can get those at LuckyShotUSA.com, LuckyShotUSA.com. You can get those there. And they have several different varieties, but I love this. This was a gift from Mrs. Whiskey. She got this for me, and this is just absolutely awesome. So, gotta love that Four Roses. All right. Tonight, I have got a jam-packed show with a whole bunch of conversation. And I've got so many articles, I'm probably not going to be able to get to them all, I'll be honest with you. But, that's just the way we roll around here. Also, the other thing, too, is I have a wonderful, wonderful pet of the week. In fact, Mrs. Whiskey came walking in and she saw the picture and she was like, "Why do you have a picture of our dog who's passed away? His name was Jake. Why do we have a picture of Jake up there?" Because I had a yellow lab that looks like, this one's a golden retriever, but I had a yellow lab that looked pretty similar. And sadly, he passed a few years ago, which we ended up with Angus. We got Angus. So. Anyway. Daybreak over on Rumble. What color is my front door? It's white. Anyway, all right. I have no idea what she's doing. Trust me. She just, she's got to do her own thing over there, which is not bad. That's the way we all roll. We all kind of do our own thing. So I want to take a second and I want to say thank you very much. I happened to be on a little earlier than normal because of the meeting that I had. So I kind of set things up a little bit earlier, and it was so wonderful to see, people waiting in the lobby, to go and, essentially watch this program. You guys, you guys really do make this exciting and fun for me, knowing that you guys are excited enough to come and listen to the broadcast and the product that I'm putting out. We've got some news coming. I can't break too much of it for you, but we've got some news coming, and so so there's some stuff coming down the road here that I think you guys will be excited about. I know I will be excited about it because obviously it's everything. Well, let's get on with the program. So tonight, of course, it is Whiskey Wednesday, which of course is like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. That's right. Whiskey Wednesday is for badasses. And tonight, because it is Wednesday and whiskey, because it is Wednesday and whiskey, it is, of course, True Grit Roots Network is our sponsor for this evening, and True Grit Roots Network champions independent artists while paying respect to the pioneers who shaped modern roots music featuring outlaw country, blues, and rock with a unique twist of urban that is carefully selected and purposely put together. We are the radio highway that connects the back roads, highways, and city streets to your favorite dance hall, roadhouse, and juke joint. TGRN provides original exclusive programming and interviews that are produced and hosted by our own team of DJs, hosts, and personalities. Find us on the web at tgrn.net to download our app in the App Store and from Google Play. Alternatively, you can find us on the Live 365 catalog of digital radio stations and through the Live 365 app as well. You can also play our station on your Amazon Alexa by saying, play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. Be sure to use the word from in the command, play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. Live 365 is now on Roku, so you can tune your TV and have it like in the kitchen or whatever and have it play True Grit Roots Network there. Breaking boundaries for authentic roots radio, True Grit Roots Network, TGRN.net, Austin, Texas. And of course, as always, I have to tell you that I am part owner. So there is a bit of a financial interest there, but not much of one. I mean, it's great programming, guys. Come on. I know I've heard from several of you that are out there that yeah, it's really good programming. I like what we're doing, and we're, things are popping, things are hopping, things are doing wonderful things over there. Okay. So, of course, Rumble is saying, and I'm going to say it here, it is No Pants Wednesday. So, if you feel the urge to walk around in your underwear, go ahead and take those pants off, folks. I actually am not wearing pants, guys. Not wearing pants. I'm wearing shorts. You see, you dirty-minded people, you thought that I was going to do something there. No. I've already put out my naked photo. You can find that on my on one of my social media outlets because I did put it out to everybody. So you could go and take a look at that if you want on anything, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Gab, GETTR, Truth, Social, all of that stuff. But anyway. All right. Well, I guess there has been enough conversation and enough pressure on Bud Light, in particular, Mr. Dylan Mulvaney, because of the fact that he, and yes, he is a he, okay, he had to leave the country, apparently. Now, okay, so to be completely honest and serious here, I mean, just to take it out of the perspective of how this might be a little funny, but the funny thing, or the thing about this is it's never funny when somebody has to leave in order to protect themselves. We as a country should not have to fear for our lives. Okay. But at the same time, though, I honestly don't. I'm not sure that this person was really in a situation where they had to go and leave the country. And in fact, here, let me go ahead and show you. So this Dylan Mulvaney, this comes from the Epoch Times, although I've seen it in a bunch of other places. Dylan Mulvaney leaves country while former Anheuser-Busch executive slams the company CEO. So anyway, apparently Dylan took off and is spending time down in Peru based on a social media post that he posted. And in it, he said that the people here are so kind. I feel very safe here. It's a little sad that I had to leave my country to feel safe, but that will get better eventually. And it's not known whether or not Mr. Mulvaney was aware of the fact that Peru doesn't recognize gay marriage or non-binary genders. So, yeah, like I said, it seems to be a little bit out of sorts for that. But apparently he claims that he does not feel safe in the U.S. and has appeared in, even though he's appeared in public multiple times since the whole Bud Light debacle back in April. Mr. Mulvaney in June attended a New York City Pride Night event and also made an appearance at the Tony Awards. So, yeah, he's like, look, folks, this guy, he's an attention hog. That's what he's after. He just likes the attention. And, of course, you know, anything that he can do to make people want to sympathize, empathize, ridicule, whatever. He doesn't care. He likes it all. That's just the way that people like this roll. They like the attention. And apparently, so even though Peru recognizes homosexuality, it does not recognize gay marriage. And conversion therapy is not banned in the country. Non-binary genders are also not legally recognized. Peru scores a 57 out of a possible 100 in the Equaldex's Equality Index. So anyway, yeah, I just thought it was interesting that he took off. Apparently in a June 30th Instagram video, he insisted that he has faced more bullying and transphobia than I could ever have imagined after being part of Bud Light's promotional campaign. Okay, I'm just going to point this out, all right? And this goes true for, I think, just about anything. You know, Ben Shapiro calls it the face tattoo syndrome. And literally what this is, you know, when you go and do things like put bright colors in your hair or tattoo your face with something, I mean, how can you not expect people to want to take a look at, you know, something like that? So I'm sorry, but I just don't, if you're doing something to call attention to yourself, for an example, this show, I am doing it not just to call attention to myself. However, that is expected. I am expecting that people will eventually be recognizing me out in public. It's not something that I necessarily want, or don't want, by the way, either way. But it is an accepted thing that I'm going to have to accept in order to be able to do something like this. Same thing, haters, non-haters. I mean, I do posts on Twitter and on my social media, and sometimes, I mean, I say it's the truth. It's my viewpoint. It's my opinion. But sometimes it is one of those things where I can get backlash if I say the wrong things and do the wrong things or do the right things. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of one of the things that's happening. And no, buddy, I am not going to get pigtails. Okay. Period. I can't even grow my hair long enough for that. All right. Enough about Dylan Mulvaney. I'm done about that. But the thing about it is, though, is that again, if you're in the spotlight, you kind of have to expect a certain amount of public interest, from from others. And so that's just that is part of the life. You'll have to go and you're going to get recognized. That's part of being a public figure, unfortunately. I mean, that's the good and the bad of the whole situation. So anyway, which always gets me, by the way, always gets me a little uptight whenever I see stars going nuts on people. And granted, I do understand there are some that will push the envelope, let's say. For an example, I've seen some famous people in my life, and those kinds of people, I generally, if they're in a situation where they are there to meet the public, i.e., a book signing, a meet and greet, signatures, those kinds of things, I can understand coming up and talking to that individual. But if you see an individual who's out with their wife, significant other, family, they're just kind of hanging out in a restaurant or something, it depends on the situation, but you really, really should take a second before you go and just jump in front of somebody and say, hey, can I talk to you? It's that kind of stuff. So, from that standpoint, on the flip side of that, though, as a public figure, you do need to have the expectation that people are not necessarily going to respect those types of boundaries. I do whenever I meet somebody who is, famous or well-known. But that's just me. And I don't necessarily expect that anybody else is going to do that, per se. That being said, it is appreciated when it does happen. It is appreciated when it does happen. I can guarantee you that. All right. So the big topic for today, of course, was the FBI Director Wray sat on the Hill again to answer questions about his organization doing all manner of unconstitutional things. And so this popped from Just the News this morning to kind of talk a little bit about it. And this came from Just the News. 7 hot button questions FBI Director Wray will likely face at the House Judiciary Committee meeting. All right. And, some of the questions that are in here, they were, nothing unusual here, but here's a series of questions, according to the piece, that will likely be asked during his testimony before the House Judiciary Committee. One is the Durham investigation. Durham concluded his probe, where the FBI lacked sufficient evidence to launch the investigation into potential collusion into Trump's 2016 presidential campaign in Russia. He will probably be asked how he's going to, avoid that in the future. The second question, which actually I think is a more important question, I don't know why they would care whether or not, it's kind of cool that 2016, you don't want it to repeat itself, but I think we're kind of dead from that. Nothing's ever going to come out of it, so why would we expect the FBI to actually do anything to keep it from happening again? But anyway, the second question is the U.S. court revealing in May that the FBI improperly searched for information in a U.S. database of foreign intelligence 278,000 times over the last several years, including on Americans. Now that is a big thing to me. Okay. That, a lot of people don't understand, but that was actually implemented as a part of the Patriot Act. And while the Patriot Act sounded really cool, the name, we're patriots, we're American patriots. And you sounded that really, really cool. But in reality, it stripped some of the freedoms and liberties, especially our Fourth Amendment rights to be secure within our persons and our papers, and that kind of stuff. Now, the idea of the FISA Act was, of course, to spy on foreign agents that were here, and that they were supposed to mask and prevent Americans who interacted with these individuals who are under investigation from being exposed. But we all know how that went with General Flynn. So again, I understand the need but it's a very, very sticky situation, one which I don't think we should really be getting involved in. So anyway, another question that might be asked is apparently, now this one was news to me. Apparently the Justice Department just shut down a program that was focused on countering Chinese espionage. Wray should be asked whether he agreed with the decision and if the shutdown has hampered efforts to prevent China's espionage. Well, anything obviously that deals with foreign espionage should be handled harshly, to be honest with you. But anyway, testimony from the IRS is another question. Testimony from IRS whistleblowers recently made public by the House Ways and Means Committee, alleging that the FBI was aware of the content on Hunter Biden's laptop in October of 2019, but the agency waited months to turn the information over to investigators working on the case. Now, this again, to me, is probably within the top 5, let's say, on the list of things that this guy really needs to answer for. Because if the FBI is truly going to be impartial, and especially the Department of Justice being impartial, then yeah, this question definitely is one that has to be answered. And honestly, it should be followed immediately by his resignation if he was in charge at the time, just because of the fact that that's ridiculous. I mean, the Hunter Biden laptop is true. It is factual. It's been proven. The FBI knows, so on and so forth. So anyway, let's see. They had a question, or the piece lists a question about Wray holding Wray in contempt for not turning over the FD 1023 form, which is the form that, of course, outlined the Hunter Biden, or the Biden family, pay to play, influence peddling scheme, so on and so forth. Of course, it was postponed because Wray, finally turned it over after he allowed, key lawmakers to view it. Let's see. Another question that came up should come up would be, critics of the FBI argue that the agency has become over politicized and operates as a two-tiered justice system. Yep. That's pretty much true. And then, of course, the last question that they list here is the whistleblower testimony was delivered to the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government in May, which, by the way, if the FBI wasn't doing things like going after conservative Republicans or conservative Americans and being soft on liberal Democrats, we wouldn't need a Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. Anyway, so Jim Jordan, of course, said he had plans to ask Wray about the steps he's taken to protect whistleblowers from retaliation for coming to Congress. Well, okay, so he went and testified, and there were a couple things in particular that came out, a couple articles. This first one here from the Daily Wire has to deal with protecting the Biden family. So, absolutely not, he says. Director Wray, of course, denies the agency is protecting the Biden family. This is a bunch of crap. We know it's a bunch of crap because of the fact that they sat on the Hunter Biden laptop forever, even though there's evidence proving that they knew that it was factual and correct and was Hunter Biden's long before, after they had gotten a hold of it, but long before the story actually even broke. Matt Gaetz really kind of hounded him, which is, of course, is Matt Gaetz's typical process. But Matt Gaetz began his time, according to the piece, for questioning by asking Wray about a WhatsApp message Hunter Biden allegedly sent to the CEFC China Energy executive Henry Zhao in 2017. That's the one that, of course, everybody was talking about a week and a half ago, where Biden or Hunter was saying that his dad was sitting right next to him in order to get the executive to send the $5 million. But anyway, I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. Tell the director that I would like to resolve this now before it gets out of hand, and now means tonight. Okay. After reading part of the message, Gate asks, "That sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, director?" And Wray, of course, declined to comment. And so Gates, of course, keeps pressing and saying, "You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?" And Wray appeared offended at the question, said, "Absolutely not. The FBI has no interest in protecting anyone politically," he responded. Bullshit. Sorry. Wow, had something in my throat. Yeah, that's a whole bunch of horse hockey, because of the fact we know that they sat on the Hunter Biden laptop in particular, which had that information on it, by the way. So yeah, this is so bad. Anyway, that's just one question that, of course, Wray kind of maneuvered around, or tried to maneuver around. He also, according to the Epoch Times, repeatedly denies FBI censorship of conservatives, as Republicans point to suppressed posts. Oh, and Coco, yes, I know. More whiskey. Yep, I know. All right, so the thing about it is that we have all kinds of evidence, and in fact, we even have a judge's order from a current case being tried under the assumption that the federal government sidestepped the Constitution in an attempt to use non-governmental organizations to censor speech. So I don't know where Christopher Wray is coming up with this. He's lying yet again under this, but he had barely, according to the piece here, Wray had barely completed his opening statement to the House Judiciary Committee's FBI oversight hearing when Representative Mike Johnson from Louisiana, which is where this case is being done, anyway, he began a rapid fire. So Johnson began a rapid fire barrage of pointed questions that culminated in a clash of utterly opposed perspectives. Johnson said, "On July 4th, we had this explosive 155-page opinion from a federal court in my home state of Louisiana that explains in detail that the FBI had been indirectly involved in what the court says, and I quote, what is arguably the most massive attack on free speech in the United States history. The court ordered the White House, Department of Justice, and FBI, among others, to immediately cease colluding with and coercing social media companies to suppress American speech, conservative speech in particular. Director A, I find it stunning. You made no mention of this court opinion in either your opening statement or in this lengthy 14-page report that you prepared on July 12th, which was 8 days after the court ruling, the Louisiana Republican said. Have you read the ruling? Johnson asked. I am familiar with the ruling, and I have reviewed it with our Office of General Counsel, Wray replied. Are you deeply disturbed by what they've told you about the ruling if you haven't read it yourself? Mr. Johnson shot back. Obviously, we are going to comply with the court order, the court's injunction. We sent out guidance to the field and headquarters about how to do that. Needless to say, the injunction itself is the subject of ongoing litigation, and so I will decline to comment further, said Mr. Wray. So in other words, he's, being a typical politician and just bypassing the facts and the evidence. Folks, I mean, if you can't sit here and see that this current administration in particular is probably the most corrupt in American history. Okay. I got a bridge in Arizona that I'd really love to sell you for, around $5 to $10 million, because this is just crazy. And there's people who are still on the left who are sitting here and, they don't believe that this is happening, that they don't believe that, that this is going on. And they truly still think that the government has their best interest at heart. And I'm sorry, but this, there was a time, I'll be honest with you, there was a time where I felt like the government knew what was right and good. And the older that I've gotten and the more skilled and experience that I have learned through my age, to the point where I am now questioning everything because of the fact that, there are people out there who literally do everything they can to try and get out of, get out of trouble, get out of jail, do anything to get out of work, whatever it is. And they continually will lie, cheat, steal, manipulate any way that they can. I don't trust these guys as far as I can throw them. And believe me, I can't throw people that far. It would kind of be fun if I could, but I can't throw them that far. So this guy is a sleazy politician. He needs to be gotten rid of. And actually the FBI itself, I think, has outlived its usefulness and needs to kick out as well. So, all right, let's see. The last thing is also from the Epoch Times. That's why it looks familiar. But apparently the FBI director was also asked about an agency memo that was put out, which we all kind of know. We all kind of know about it. It's the DOJ memo that was targeting radical traditionalist Catholics. And so on this question, he said that he was aghast at learning of the internal memo targeting Catholic communities as extremists. Okay. Quick pause here. Who's the person who is in charge of everything and should know pretty much everything that's going on, or at least has the power to approve things? I would say the director of the organization or the director of the agency. If you're in that director's suite or seat, you're really supposed to be in charge and know what the hell the people underneath you are doing. So apparently it was January 20 of 23. I think actually, if I recall correctly, I did a episode on it. But it leaked from a Richmond field office in Virginia that showed that the agency had taken an interest in traditionalist and Latin mass Catholic parishes, saying that extremists would likely become interested in these parishes in the run-up to the next general election cycle. Yeah, he basically just denied about it too. He's literally lying under oath to a congressional committee. He needs to go. He needs to just go, get out of public life and everything else. These people have no shame. They have no ethics, no integrity, no anything. Okay. When it comes to this kind of thing, they literally have no concept of what they are doing is against the American principles that we have been founded on. And how this guy, I would be bringing him up on charges if I were the president of the United States, if nothing else. He would definitely be kicked out, but still, I don't get it. I don't understand where people like this come from and how they get into these positions. I really don't. I mean, obviously it's some sort of a good old boy network, and, you know, which a lot of people call, or colloquially call, the deep state. But still, I mean, this is just absolutely ludicrous. This is not what we need to have standing on. And apparently, so continuing on with the FBI here, this Breitbart article came out. Now, I was following Matt Taibbi on Twitter, and he just kept dumping Twitter files. So after a little while, I kind of was like, you know what? Most of these I'm not really interested in. Some of them I was, but most of them I'm not really interested in. And so I kind of backed off and wasn't following him anymore, because he kept dumping stuff, and it was just filling up my timeline. And I prefer to argue with liberal leftist idiots rather than, you know, looking at this. But apparently in this Breitbart article, he released another set of Twitter files, and this shows, on top of all the rest, this shows that Twitter immediately took down accounts that the FBI requested without investigations about it. And so he you know, they immediately took down the accounts. And it was all based on false charges and things of that nature. In fact, some of them were even identified to be American accounts. They weren't accounts that were foreign entities, like what Wray was saying. That, hang on just a second, I gotta close the door. That Wray had testified that they were focused on during his testimony. He made a comment how they were only going after foreign nationals and stuff. And that's not what was happening here. And so, you know, we have all this evidence, because let's face it, the truth is going to come out sooner or later. It's going to come out. And these people try to hide and everything else, but it just doesn't work. Well, this, you know, continues and continues and continues. In fact, it's even continuing even now. According to this piece in Hot Air, the FBI is still working to censor Americans on social media. And this, of course, you know, the White House even said that they were going to ignore, or they didn't outright say it. Okay, so don't crucify me on this, but they sort of hinted at the idea that they were going to ignore the order, which again doesn't surprise me any. So apparently the Justice Department, of course, like I said in a couple episodes ago, that they were appealing the order. But here's the thing. It's now being reported that the FBI has, over the past year, been working with the SBU, which is the Ukrainian Security Service, which is similar to the America's FBI, to shut down the spread of supposed Russian disinformation on social media. And the accounts of people or groups who are critical of the Ukrainian government. Okay. And on the war in Ukraine. So that pretty much means that just about anybody who doesn't agree with the war in Ukraine has been possibly targeted and potentially censored because of this. Okay. So this came out from Just the News. And here's a quote from the Just the News piece in the Hot Air piece. The FBI pressured social media companies to crack down on the spread of so-called Russian disinformation on behalf of the Ukrainian Security Service, or the SBU, according to a report from the House Weaponization Panel. But evidence suggests that the Russians had infiltrated the group and used the censorship pipeline to suppress anti-Putin and pro-Ukrainian materials as well. So yeah, look, the tendrils of the censorship industrial complex, which is what they're calling all of this, apparently spread across the globe. And while many of the targeted accounts were those of people in Europe, Americans were not immune to its reach. One of the accounts that was suspended was a verified U.S. State Department account. Oh my gosh. This is just nuts. I'm sorry. Growing up in the 80s, I could see where, well, of course we didn't have social media in the 80s. That's probably for the best. But of course the idea here was, the whole propaganda and everything else. I mean, for anybody that read the book 1984 by George Orwell, you'll know that the whole idea of media propaganda and controlling what people can see and hear goes a long way toward doing brainwashing and things of that nature. This is just absolutely nuts. I'm sorry, but this is a developing story. It's going to continue to be a developing story until somebody takes the fall for this one. But if you honestly believe that the government isn't look, anyone who's studied history knows that Fort Meade back in the 70s Fort Meade back in the 70s was a big deal because they were listening to phone lines at the time. And so yeah, we've been tapping into our phone systems and telecommunications systems and everything else for a very long time from a government perspective. So this is nothing new. They're just using the technology in ways that we are just now finding out about. So this is literally not a big deal. All right. So it is that time. Let's see. Where is it? There it is. It is that time.
Please check your mailbox. A new message has arrived.
All right. It's time for me to take a break from ranting and raving and stepping on my soapbox. I really need to find a like an animated video or something that I could put in when I step on my soapbox on stuff. Mrs. Whiskey would love to see it too. But anyway, let's move on to the pet of the week. This week, our submission comes from Julie, and I got to get rid of that. Julie, I'm not exactly sure which social media you're on. I'm assuming maybe Rumble. But anyway, so Julie writes to me and says, good evening, Whiskey. Really enjoyed your show this afternoon. I had to leave early. Now, this was on the Independence Day special, by the way. I had to leave early, but heard everything the second time around. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for listening over and over again. Which, by the way, if you're looking for that Independence Day special on YouTube, they pulled it because of the copyright. But anyway, this going back to Julie's letter here. Here is our pet, a golden retriever named Rudy. He is very easygoing and dog friendly. He's 10 years old this year. He was our empty nester dog, but he sure brings the adult children back to us. So, yeah, this is, you can tell the age, unfortunately, the age of the dog just by looking at him. He's, but golden retrievers, I love them. We had like I said before, we had a yellow lab named Jake, and he was looking kind of about like this, when he was getting, older. So anyway, this is our little baby granddaughter, and she loves to use him as a pillow. Ironically, I have a photo of of Jake when my son was young. We actually got we actually got Jake when both my son and Jake were about 6 months old or so. And so they hung out together all the time. And my son would lean on Jake just like that in a lot of cases. So anyway, Julie finishes up by saying he is a wonderful member of our family. Yes, he is. Now, for those of you that don't know, yes, I did. I normally don't have pictures of kids in this because I don't want to, necessarily do it. But this one in particular, the face isn't really clear. It isn't really shown. So that's why I decided to allow that to basically happen. But anyway, so this is Rudy. And Julie, thank you very much for submitting Rudy for us to all admire. That is wonderful. I love dogs. I love cats. I love all animals, honestly. The only thing I don't like is wasps. I hate wasps. But anyway, if you want to have your pet featured on Wednesday's segment, Pet of the Week, please send a photo and pertinent information, story, whatever, to fans, FANS, at whiskeymusings.online. That's fans at whiskeymusings.online. And you can send me send me a photo, name, breed, any kind of conversation or any kind of story that goes along with them. And we'll get them put up on the Pet of the Week segment. I don't have one for next week. Hint, hint, hint. Ding, ding, ding. So you might want to send it in and get your pet featured for next Wednesday. And so that is tonight's Pet of the Week. Also, the other thing you can do is you can send me questions for whiskey at the same address, fans at whiskeymusings.online. Which is my Saturday segment. At the end of the show, I answer questions. Doesn't matter what kind of question it is. It could be politics, society. It could be, what my favorite meal is. I don't care. That part doesn't matter. I will generally answer most questions. I'm not going to say I'll answer all of them, but I will generally answer most. So you can do that at fans at whiskeymusings.online for Saturday. I do not have a question for Saturday, by the way. Sorry, I got to check something real quick here just for a second. Because oh, okay. Yeah, they're all right. Okay, moving on to the next group of stories. And this is just kind of a group of stories. It's just a bunch of ones. But, it's not only the FBI that's really a problem here. Well, if I had a Hannah, I could probably get somebody to do that, Tommy. And yes, Becky, I like all animals except for Democrats. That's actually demo rats. Okay, not crats, but demo rats. Sorry. Okay, moving on. And yes, buddy, I don't have a question for this week. I don't think. So anyway, okay, let's move on here. So it's not just the FBI that really needs criticizing from this administration. We also have, well, yeah, Tommy, it is insulting the poor rats, but I'm really not a rat fan either. So demo or otherwise. Oh, God. Okay, I cracked myself up. That was internal laughing. Anyway, all right. Speaking of rats, we have this guy. Oh, my gosh. We have this guy, DHS Chief Mayorkas, ignores request to disclose how many illegals have been freed into the U.S. Well, of course. Because of the fact that He's not going to tell you. He knows it's counted in the millions. I mean, seriously, let's just... He's ignoring a request from Republicans on the House Oversight Committee to disclose the number of illegal aliens, and yes, that is true, illegal aliens, the agency has released directly into American communities through its massive parole pipeline. As Breitbart News reported late last month, Republicans on the House Oversight Committee, led by James Comer, great guy, and Glenn Grothman, asked Mayorkas to provide a total numerical accounting of illegal aliens DHS has released into the United States interior through the administration's expansive parole pipeline. The letter asked to provide the data by July 7th. Apparently, he didn't do that. So apparently from January of 2021 to February of 2023, it is estimated that Biden's DHS has released more than 880,000 illegal aliens in the U.S. interior via the agency's parole pipeline at the border. The estimate, though, is not a definitive figure, as DHS barely actively buries such data. Apparently, we have, I mean, this administration is just absolutely corrupt. I don't know how anybody can really support them, can support this administration. I really don't. I really don't know what, how these people even can, how anybody can actually support this guy. You know, especially Biden's numbers are in the toilet, but even then, he's still, got 30% of the population thinking that he's doing a good job. Kind of an idiot question or an idiot situation. But anyway, apparently our thoughts are really not the only ones, because even Dems are leaving the Democrat Party. So this popped in the Epoch Times. Georgia lawmaker switches to Republican after feuding with former Democrat colleagues over school choice and policing. A member of the Georgia State House of Representatives has switched her party affiliation from Democrat to Republican after breaking with her former party over issues like school choice and policing. She said, "My name is Representative Maisha Maynor, and today I made the decision to leave the Democrat Party," Ms. Maynor wrote on Twitter Tuesday. "I represent a blue district in the city of Atlanta, so this wasn't a political decision for me. It was a moral one. I will never apologize for being a black woman with a mind of my own." And of course, typical, the Democrats are probably going to crap all over her, even though she is considered one of their, persons of color and holding them up. She's probably going to crap all over her, just like they do Clarence Thomas and any other black American who sides with the Republican Party. But stuff like this is encouraging, in a very encouraging thing. So, anyway, so sorry, I was reading a little bit in the chat here with regards to a couple of things. But anyway, so yeah, you're going to see, I honestly think that the more that the Democrat Party goes left, the more you're going to see stuff like this happening. I mean, we're already seeing like Kristen Sinema becoming an independent. Now, granted, she still caucuses with the Democrat Party, so it doesn't really do anything for us. But I think that what you're going to find is you're going to find a lot of Democrats are that the moderate Democrats are going to be, kicking around this whole idea. And I'm sorry, I got to bring this up. So apparently, over here on the Rumble chat, so quick diversion. Let's go ahead and do this here. Yeah, let's do the train is derailed, for a moment, but a quick diversion. Okay. So apparently someone has a flag that is, looking. So definitely not Karen over on Rumble says, Day, there is a Boy Scout troop out around council office or council office. They take flags and dispose of them correctly. The only thing that I've got to say this, because I actually participated in the Boy Scouts as a scout leader, and the way that they do those ceremonies are just incredible. If you've never seen one of these things before, it is a very somber occasion. And actually, I know it, like around here, there's a bunch of the Boy Scouts have boxes out where you can retire flags. And yes, the process generally does include burning the flag. However, you can't necessarily burn all flags. There's places like, or flags that are made out of nylon, or some of the more toxic kinds of things that don't burn enough. If it's a cotton flag, they'll burn it, no problem. In fact, what they do to prep it is they'll put the cotton flag inside a bag of alcohol to make it easier to burn. Let the cotton soak up the alcohol, and then it'll be easier to burn. But as far as the like the nylon flags and that kind of stuff, some of those can actually be recycled. And there are companies and places out there that you can actually send and recycle them. I know that they'll burn, but sometimes it's kind of questionable in terms of releasing those kinds of gases up in the environment and that kind of stuff. So I would say try to recycle it first if it's like a nylon or a polyethylene material or whatever. But if it's cotton, definitely you can go ahead and burn it. The Title IV actually says that when the flag can no longer be repaired, and of course I'm paraphrasing here, but when the flag can no longer be repaired, that is when you are to retire the flag. It does not specify specifically how the flag gets retired. However, one of the things that it does say is preferably by burning. And so usually the ceremonies that the Boy Scouts do are just incredible. The one that I was privy to and witness to was that they took the flag, and of course, like I said, they soaked it in alcohol beforehand. But at the end of our little powwow that we do, that they talk about the day and stuff, it's the nighttime campfire. They have an actual script that they read. And it's just incredible, this script. They go through like the different colors, they go, what they mean, and so on and so forth. And then they had in this particular troop, what they did is they had a bugler who actually played taps. And at the end of taps, because the camp that we were at actually had muzzle loading, one of the guy that does the muzzle loading, he actually, and I talked to him afterward because I have a muzzle loader, and he talked to me afterward, but he showed me and told me how to do it so that the muzzle loader sounded like a cannon. And it was just fantastic, because the scene we were in, we were looking out over a lake. And so when that muzzle loader went off without a bullet in it, but when it went off, it sounded and reflected and made it sound like a cannon. And it was just absolutely fantastic. So the question Coco Dominki asks, just because I happen to be on this topic, can the flag be sewn? Yes, that is not disrespectful. In fact, repairs can be made to the flag as long as it is still serviceable. You can sew them. You can, there's actually, I've even found places online that you can send, like if you have a nylon flag that's just faded, but still, everything, what you can do is you can of course send it in and they can re-ink it for you. There are some things that you can do there, but there's plenty of services online. Just look for Retire the U.S. Flag. You can go to the Boy Scouts. They can even give you the ceremony. They have it. It's all public information. They have different ceremonies, different troops, put them up online and stuff like that. And you can do all of that. If you live outside in the sticks, just remember, like Buddy points out, I'm not going to steal his thunder here, but Buddy points out, it just, sometimes when you live out in the country, there's no Boy Scouts or troops. You just need to be respectful. And this is true, is that you just need to be respectful, is the main thing with regards to retiring the flag. Just remember to make it a somber occasion. It should be done respectfully. And actually, even like the VFW, I think, and the American Legion, I think both of those will take old flags and will actually be able to, retire the flag for you. You can do that. So it is entirely possible to do all of that. But anyway, I digress. So that was kind of interesting. That would have been an interesting question for Saturday, but since the chat just took off with all of these questions, I decided to go ahead and address it. All right. So another thing that is being essentially kind of flopped around here with regards to our corrupt government is the fact that the scientists that were working with Fauci and Collins, they struggled to explain the emails that disprove or refute the lab leak. Okay. So again, I'm sorry, but if you are still in the camp that this thing was not a lab generated virus, that it created itself in natural, all natural. Honestly, I don't know what to tell you. This thing had modified genome sequences to it. It started in Wuhan. It started with doctors and staff in the lab where they were doing gain of function experiments under the guise of military bioweapons. There's just no way that this thing could not have been lab generated. So if you're still in the camp that you think that it was some sort of special pangolin that got into, a wet market nearby or whatever, if you're still buying that, I've got that bridge in Arizona that I would love to sell you. Okay. It's overlooking a fantastic, water covered, serene showing. Anyway. So yeah, this is just yet another thing. They apparently have found some published emails and Slack messages from 2020 that were going back and forth between the people in charge who were trying to steer us away from the idea that it was made in a lab. And they allegedly show undue influence of Francis Collins and Anthony Fauci, then directors of the NIH, and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and NIAID. Anyway, so apparently they have these again. It's just seriously, come on. And apparently they were also got onto a call. They had a conference call on February 1, 2020, to discuss it. And it's just, this is ridiculous. We know it came from the lab. You guys don't need to hide it anymore. You really don't. Anyway. All right. So let's see here. So the other thing that has showed up this week, and especially over the last couple of days, is this whole idea. Now, the whole idea of the affirmative action, taken down by the Supreme Court, for admissions into colleges. Well, there's also somewhere else that is doing kind of a racial thing that might be a little dangerous. And surprise, surprise, it's coming from a Democrat stronghold. So check this out. This popped in the Epoch Times. Kind of found this interesting. Apparently, the Supreme Court justices warn New York again not to use race to ration medical treatment. Okay? Two conservative Supreme Court justices warned New York officials that if they try again to ration health care based on the patient's race, as they did with COVID-19 treatments in 2021, they will vote to take a case challenging the policy on an emergency basis. The comment came from Justice Alito, great guy, filed when the court denied a request to review the plan of New York City and New York State to deprioritize the treatment of white COVID-19 patients during the recent pandemic. Justice Thomas joined the statement. Both justices concurred with the denial only because the circumstances underlying the dispute have now since long come and gone, meaning that it was before the COVID-19 emergency, but it has ended, I should say. Without providing an explanation, the Supreme Court turned down the petition for certiorari or review in Roberts versus McDonald. In an unsigned order on June 30th, at least 4 of the 9 justices have voted to grant, at least 4 of 9 have to vote. God, have another drink, Rick. To grant a petition in order for it to move forward to the oral argument stage. The denial of the petition came a day after the court issued a landmark ruling in the Students for Fair Admissions versus President and Fellows of Harvard College, in which the court found that racial discrimination in college admissions process was unconstitutional. So, yeah, they basically just issued a warning. But here's the deal. Why is it that Democrats have such a penchant for looking toward race-based policies, race-based, things? Because I just don't get it. They are so focused on race and dividing and putting people in boxes that I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't understand the thought process. Why would you even think that somebody's immutable characteristic, such as skin or hair color or eye color, is even remotely a reason to deny or support or anything else? Or even, leftists have been, and there's been plenty of stuff shown where leftists are like, well, black people can't get ID, or black people don't know how to use a computer, or, black people can't figure out how to vote. And I just don't understand that. How as a person of color, you cannot look at that and say, oh my gosh, you're actually being racist right now. And yet you still support that party. It doesn't make any sense to me. If somebody looked at me and said, you're being stupid, which leftists do all the time. They on social media, they always say, you're just a dumb Trump supporter, blah, blah, blah. I, of course, respond in a very negative fashion. Okay. And I just don't get it. How you can even still be supportive of these people. The situation that I'm talking about is the bigotry of low expectations. And the left in particular really pushes this kind of crap and really does, they literally are the racists in this situation. How people can't see this is completely beyond me. I mean, how could you even say, look, all you have to do is just have a clear-cut in terms of like the admissions for colleges, have a clear cut look. Here's the score that you need on a particular test. And if you score well, then great. You can get in. I mean, even Joy Reid, who is probably one of the most bigoted, racist people I have ever seen in media, how she still has a show, I have no idea. But even she admitted that she wouldn't have been able to get into Harvard if it weren't for affirmative action, which makes you wonder. She literally says that she did not have the scores to get in. And so she was brought in anyway. I mean, this is just crazy to think of that these people would think that this is acceptable. I mean, if it turns out that people of color are not getting in, and by people of color, I'm talking, Asians, Hispanics, and blacks, all, if they find out that people of color are not getting admitted to these universities and they're all being tested the exact same way, then what we need to do is we need to make sure that we correct the procedure to get them there. You don't have somebody test on something and then just let them by because of an immutable characteristic. You help them train. You help them by teaching them the subjects that they miss, by quizzing them, by hitting them up and educating them on some of the things that they might have had a problem with. That's what you do. And it doesn't even matter what color their skin is. Everybody has the capability to learn. Everybody has the capability to learn. And it is just freaking ridiculous to me to sit here and think that somebody who has different levels of melanin in their skin, that this affects their brain function, their ability to understand. It's nuts. Absolutely crazy. And it infuriates me to think that to have these leftists call me a white supremacist because of the fact that I just don't believe in the fact that an immutable characteristic is an important factor when it comes to certain things like being able to understand, comprehend, and be able to perform functions and to be able to do things in society. That has nothing to do with it. Just gets me freaking frustrated. Just frustrated to no end. Anyway. But apparently New York City had something to do with medical treatment and is being cautioned by the Supreme Court. Like I said, I need a soapbox video. I need that. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no surprise here for this one, but apparently, according to the Epoch Times, the Secret Service actually refused to hand over records regarding the cocaine in the White House case. Part of it, I think, is because they're still, quote unquote, investigating, even though I'm sure they know who it is and they're doing their job. I mean, I'll admit that the Secret Service has done a lot to protect the integrity of the White House. In fact, even the fact that this even became public is kind of surprising to me, to be honest with you, because of the fact that they had, like, JFK. I mean, I kind of mentioned this before, I think on the last episode. JFK had, affairs in the White House with people, and they were sneaking people in and out. So either the Secret Service is slipping or somebody actually leaked this out to let everybody know that this, I mean, I assume that with the hazmat teams showing up, it was one of those things where I was like, oh shit, we got stuck. Anyway, so, again, they denied a FOIA request in a letter dated July 11th. They told Bloomberg Business, investigative reporter Jason Leupold, that the FOIA request he made to the agency for records regarding the White House cocaine cannot be complied with. The FOIA request had asked for information such as emails, text messages, memos, intelligence bulletins, so on and so forth, basically a big old blanket. regarding the suspicious, regarding the reporting about the cocaine found in the West Wing of the White House on July 2nd. The reason that the Secret Service gave, of course, is that the requested information could potentially interfere with enforcement proceedings. That's usually the answer that they give, by the way, when they're in an investigation. So that pretty much that releasing it could kind of taint ongoing investigations. But whether or not those investigations are actually going to be doing, I don't know. But apparently the Secret Service is still investigating. Haven't quite figured out how they can not know whose it was. Dan Bongino has gone through plenty and has talked about how it most likely was somebody who did not go through the normal security channels to get into the White House. So, anyway, all right. Okay, so that pretty much kind of does it. Like I said, I didn't think I was going to make it all the way through. I had a bunch of articles to deal with tonight, but apparently, it isn't going to do. I wasn't going to be able to get through all of them. I wish I could. But anyway, all right. Now let's go on to our last little thing here, which is the Constitution Quarter. All right. In tonight's Constitution Quarter, I invite you to pull out a copy of the Constitution. If you want to get this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound Constitution put out by the Institute on the Constitution, you can just go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online and you can have your own pocket-sized, leather-bound, 100-year warranty Constitution for your own. And it has water-resistant pages. Look at that binding going all the way through. It is a 100-year warranty against manufacturing defects and materials they will either fix or replace. So head on over to constitution.whiskeymusings.online and support the program. But I have, for tonight, I want to talk about, there's so many times that people have posted on, what is the government's purpose? What do they do? And there's a bunch of people out there who believe that things like the Department of Education is an important piece of the government, that the healthcare, the whole social services kind of thing, that the things like I'm trying to think of things like getting in the abortion racket is all part of what the Constitution, what the federal government is supposed to be. And the reality of it is that none of those things are actually outlined in the Constitution. Things that are the responsibility of the federal government are actually outlined, believe it or not, in Article 1, which covers the legislature. Now, for those of you that remember, the legislature is the lawmaking body of our government. We have the three branches. We have the legislature, we have the executive, and we have the judiciary. The executive is supposed to execute the laws as the legislature puts forth, and the judiciary decides on whether or not if a law that is written or how it's even enforced is constitutional. And that's the purpose of our three branches of government in kind of a nutshell. Okay. But if anyone is worried or questioning as to what our government is supposed to be doing, all they have to do is go to Article 1, Section 8. And I'm going to read a few things here through this, but I would suggest that you get familiar with this section because this is specifically what the federal government is supposed to be doing. All right. So the first one, obviously, is Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imports, or imposts and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Now, there is some question as to what falls under general welfare, okay, which you can make an argument for it for a lot of things. But as a part of this, Congress and the federal government is allowed to borrow money on the credit of the United States, regulate commerce with foreign nations, and among several states and with the Indian tribes. Okay. To establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies, coin money, provide for the punishment of counterfeiting said money, to establish post offices and post roads, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and investors an exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Now, that particular point is the whole concept of the copyright. Okay. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. That's where they created, in the first gathering, that's where they created the lower court system underneath the Supreme Court. That's what they were supposed to do. To define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas. To declare war. To raise and support armies, which this, by the way, that particular one is a argument that can be made for the purpose of the Second Amendment, where everybody seems to think that the Second Amendment is, a well-regulated militia means that the government is in charge of the militia. But this one says that they are raising and supporting armies. If, for those of you that don't know, the founding fathers didn't actually believe in a regular standing army. They were kind of against the idea. They considered it abhorrent. To provide and maintain a navy, to make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces. So these three are basically talking about the military. That's pretty much all it is. To provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. So this is where they outline how the militia can get called up and so on and so forth. Sort of provide the framework of things like our National Guard and that kind of stuff. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. Now, granted, there's a lot more to this. I'm just hitting the highlights here. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district. Now, this particular entry is where they call out and say that Congress is in charge of the 10-mile square area known as DC. And that's that particular piece. And then it says, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or office thereof. Now, that's it. That's Section 8. That's Section 8. There is not a whole heck of a lot to this in terms of what Congress is supposed to be creating rules and laws for. Okay? So this is why I keep telling people the federal government and the federal government by itself was not designed to be as big as what it has become. And that's further enforced by the 10th Amendment, which the amendments were put together. The first 10 were put together, which is commonly known as the Bill of Rights. Those 10 amendments were done a few years after the Constitution was originally written. In order to clarify the fact, in terms of the 10th Amendment, which is one of my favorite amendments, basically says that if it's not written in the Constitution, nor specifically prohibited by it to the states, that the government itself, the federal government itself, doesn't have jurisdiction over it or do anything with it. It's something that they have to pass over to the states and to the people. That's pretty much it. So here's the thing. If that's all that the government is supposed to be doing, how in the heck did it get so big? Well, because people didn't read and understand the Constitution and don't understand the fact that the Constitution is a limiting document, not one that provides for powers, but actually tells the government this is all you can do. It isn't, this is what you can do. And then, oh, by the way, you can expand upon this whenever you'd like. That's what the amendment process, as written in Article 5, is supposed to do. But here we have a government that has overgrown its bounds way outside of the guardrails that were supposed to be placed in place. And the American people are just accepting it and allowing it to happen, allowing it to do all of these things. We need to rein the federal government back in to where the Constitution basically says, this is it. This is all you can do. And we need to start enforcing the 10th Amendment, to be honest with you. And that is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Do me a favor. If you like the program, please head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account. It is free, and you can follow the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel over there. Also, don't forget, Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, I will be right back here on the broadcast and with a whole new episode. And do me a favor, send me in a question for Whiskey. I really don't like it when I don't have something for the segment. So do me a favor, send in a question for Whiskey to fans@whiskeymusings.online, as well as send me a pet of the week for next week. Also to fans@whiskeymusings.online. And we'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you Saturday. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.